Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our 2021-22, or who knows what school year it is really, School Meals Program Annual Training. My name is Nigel Henley, and I am the Training and Communication Specialist for the Division of Health and Wellness School Nutrition Programs team. I am responsible for coordinating training for the School Nutrition Programs team, maintaining resources available to the Child Nutrition Program staff, and managing communications from the team to you. Hopefully you all know who I am from the many emails you've gotten from me over the last few weeks, and the reminder email I sent you all about today's training yesterday. I have a couple of logistics things to go over before you never hear from me again. I'm kidding, you'll hear from me a little bit later in the day. Throughout today's presentation, the school programs team will be fielding questions through the chat feature and will provide many opportunities for questions and answers throughout the presentation as well as at the end of today's session. If you have questions as the team members or guest presenter is presenting, or simply don't want to forget that pressing question that popped into your mind as we move through the presentation, please feel free to chat your questions to us so that we can ensure that you walk away from today's training feeling empowered to operate your meal programs. I'm going to send a quick message in the chat. I'm just going to say hello here to you all. And that chat function should have popped up for you. It's going to be a text bubble with a orange marker up in the top of your Microsoft Teams window there. If you see that icon and you see that orange marker, you know you're in the right place. You found the chat. While you're there, please go ahead and type in your name in the chat, first and last name. This will let us know that you found the feature, but also typing your name in the chat will help us keep account of your participation in today's training. If you're having trouble with the chat function, we found that sometimes the fix is a simple one. Simply log out of the training and log back in using the link that was sent in your confirmation email, the email that I sent last night, or your calendar invite. And you'll log back into the training using that, and usually that will remedy the problem. You finding the chat function in today is also super important because the team is going to be dropping plenty of links to resources through the chat. Additionally, the team has worked in several opportunities for engagement today. Some of those engagement strategies are electronic and on different platforms like Jamboard or Mentimeter or Menti, as some of you all may know it. Sorry, Kahoot is still in quarantine, maybe next year. The links to those engagement platforms will be dropped in the chat too. Other times we'll ask for you to come off mute and share information with your fellow peers, so we hope to hear from you at points throughout the presentation. When those times arrive, we encourage you all to use the raise hand function located in the top of your Microsoft Teams toolbar next to the chat icon. And you guessed it, the raise hand icon looks like a raised hand. You click it once to raise your hand, you click it again to lower your hand. Finally, as I shared in the beginning, please know that today's training is being recorded and will be made available on the Aussie website within a few days. Because this session is being recorded, we ask that outside of engagement opportunities, all participants mute themselves so that excess background noise is not recorded as well. Now, I've said all that I can say, at least for now. I'm going to stop talking so that we can officially begin today's training, and I'm going to pass the mic or snazzy new headphones, as you see me modeling here, to Liz to officially kick us off. Liz, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Nigel. And good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited. I know the team is so excited to be with everyone today. Happy Wednesday, happy late afternoon of our hump day. We're excited to spend the next couple of hours with you. And as Nigel said, we're hoping that you engage with us over the next couple of hours. We want you to enjoy your time today, hopefully come away having learned something. And don't worry, we will have a stretch break in the middle so everyone gets to stand up. Feel free to do so at any time. That's one of the benefits of us doing this virtually. So for those who I haven't met yet, my name is Elizabeth Leach. I'm the Nutrition Programs Manager here at Aussie. You will also hear from many on our team today. I truly wish we were in an environment that kind of allowed us to introduce ourselves to each other and maybe even in small groups. Since we are virtual today, I would love for everyone to please take a moment. I know you've already said hello in the chat, but if you're so inclined, introduce yourself a little bit further so that our Aussie team, as well as your colleagues and other LEAs, get to know you. And while you're introducing yourself a little bit in the chat, I'll introduce myself a little bit further here. I've been with Aussie just over 5 years now, working in the school nutrition programs team. Prior to that, I was with DC Public Schools on their food and nutrition team for a little over 4 years. And prior to that, I came from a restaurant operations background. And unknown fact about me, which I encourage folks to share something new that no one knows about them, is that, let's see, last month I tried stand-up paddleboarding for the first time ever, and I'm really into it. So if anyone has any recommendations on where to do that from this area, please send them my way because I know it's hard to get to places. So hopefully that warms us up for a little bit today. Thank you for those that are sharing in the chat. I can see them coming in, but look forward to reading them in a bit. In addition to hearing from many members on our team today, you will also be hearing from Reggie Galloway, the Director of Operations for the Social Justice School. So I hope everyone gets excited to look forward to that. As I reflect on the past 15 months, I'm reminded why myself, and I'm guessing each of you, may be in the roles you are in today. I want to name a couple of memorable dates. March 13th, 2020, June 5th, 2020, January 6th, 2021. These dates are most likely ingrained in everyone's memory as dates that we lived through history this past year or so. March 13th was the date that the country essentially shut down. June 5th was the day that Mayor Bowser named Black Lives Matter Plaza in DC amongst days of protest. January 6th, 2021, the US Capitol building in our city was under attack. While I know each of these dates brings up a whirl of memories and emotion, I also know these dates are very similar in important ways. On each of those days, while our city and our country was experiencing extreme challenges, you and each colleague and partner that you work with to support students was doing just that, supporting students. While you may have been experiencing your own trauma, you also prioritized DC students and ensured that they had not just food, but supplies, educational supports, and a community to be a part of during that time. I am humbled and honored to be a part of this community and walk alongside each of you as we prepare for a promising school year ahead. I want to start today by thanking each of you and the colleagues and partners you work with for being a hero over the past 15 months to support DC students. You have used your superpowers to plan and execute meal service through even the hardest of days. From the team here at Aussie, we thank you. We also want to provide space and time for each of you to elevate yourself and others you've worked with as heroes. We're going to drop a link in the chat now to a collaborative platform called Jamboard that hopefully I think Nigel's also going to show us a little bit now. And we encourage each of you throughout our sessions today to share names, stories, or pictures of food service heroes that have rocked their superpowers this past year. Most likely you are one of them, so please don't hesitate to share about yourself. Before we leave today, we're going to circle back to this Jamboard and share out some of the inspiring stories that you've shared here today. We will next be grounding today's discussion in Aussie's 3 recovery priorities: a safe reopening, student and staff well-being, and accelerated learning. These priorities capture the most critical areas of focus for LEAs in developing a comprehensive plan for continuous education. I'm going to pause for a moment so Nigel can catch up with me with our slides because I think the switching back and forth may have took a moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. All right, so can you go back one, Nigel? All right, so these are the 3 recovery priorities that we're grounding our discussion in today. And I know these are really familiar to folks. You've been working on your continuous education plans and your health and safety plans and grounding in these recovery priorities. The second recovery priority of student and staff well-being includes ensuring access to nutritious food. We know this is incredibly important because students can't be their best if they're hungry, if they don't have the right nutrition, or if they're worried about food access. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago in one of our summer series calls, but I want to reiterate here, and not everyone may have been on that call. So I want to talk about what food insecurity is. Food insecurity is a lack of consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life. Both residents of the district and children in the area have seen an increase in food insecurity since the public health emergency began, which you can see from a couple of our beautiful infographics here. So what does it mean when people are food insecure? When children are food insecure, they're more likely to experience stomach aches, headaches, colds, ear infections, and fatigue. They're sick more often, they recover more slowly, and they're more likely to be hospitalized. Food insecure children have trouble concentrating in school, as do food insecure adults. They have stunted physical development and have social and behavioral issues. Our students in DC are experiencing this every day. Thankfully, this community right here that we are a part of is a community of heroes, and we have certain superpowers to make a tremendous impact on food insecurity for DC students. Today, we're going to be discussing each of these superpowers that you see here. Some people might call this an agenda, but I like to think of it as each of the superpowers that we can use to create school meal programs that reduce food insecurity for our students. Throughout our time today, we're going to be providing updates to regulations and guidance. We're going to hear from a school food authority on effective strategies and implementing that guidance. And we hope that you're able to use this knowledge and these tools to ensure every student has access to and participates in school meals to prepare them to learn each day. We plan to continue working with each of you, our LEA partners, to make this happen. The information we present today is the most up-to-date that we have as of this moment. We were changing things up till this morning to ensure it is the most recent information that you have. As we all know, and we've gotten accustomed to over the past year or so, guidance changes frequently, and you all have gotten so good at pivoting operations when needed. We commit that if and when updates to this information are made, we will share that out with you as soon as and quickly as we can. And later today, Nigel will be deep diving into the ways that we will share that information with you. Before I hand over our mic today, I want to share this beautiful infographic that represents our belief here in the Division of Health and Wellness that healthy bodies and healthy minds are the foundation of academic success. Today, we focus mostly on the nutrition, environment, and services, which you can see at about 2 p.m. on the clock here, if we pretend this is a clock. We know that so many of you also support a number of the other components here to creating a whole school, whole community, whole child model. So thank you for the work that you do. With that, I'm honored to introduce Lizette Wells.
Thank you, Liz. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Lizette Wells, and I'm looking forward to sharing the latest health and safety guidance for this school year. So as a food service director, creating a culture of food safety is a key part of your food service program. You will have a culture of food safety when food safe behaviors are second nature to the members of your school food community, and these behaviors are consistently practiced to help keep students healthy and safe. In order to create a culture of food safety, you will need to know not only why it is important, but how it can impact your operation. Today, we will discuss the steps to ensure that you are safely serving food, which includes understanding updated guidance for schools, different ways we can serve meals, and who should be involved in your efforts. As we return to school buildings, families, students, and staff want to be assured that all aspects of safety have been addressed. The previous virtual learning environment showed us how important it is for families to have access to food. Therefore, as we seek to return to school and provide meals, we must be reminded of why food safety is important. Food safety is important because illness can lead to multiple sick members within the school community. When members become sick, this can lead to lost time among several groups of people. This includes lost instruction time for students who must miss time in school. And if meals are provided to staff, they may become sick and have to miss time from work. Illness can also cause parents and caregivers to lose time from work if a student needs to stay home from school. Additionally, if we have a student become sick from eating in school, this will lead to lower student morale, and they won't have as much trust towards school's meals as they've had in the past. The impact on an organization can include vendor and supplier mistrust if there's a concern that the illness came from the handling of the food prior to the meals being received by the school. Schools may also experience a loss of potential reimbursement from revenue for meals that can't be served or claimed. And lastly, it can lead to bad publicity for the school and for the organization as a whole. So the most recent guidance for schools was released by DC Health on May 19th and by Aussie on June 25th. And as Liz said, this guidance is constantly changing and we'll be sure to share updates as they become available. This updated guidance provides information that continues to be anchored in the 5 key mitigation strategies recommended by the CDC. These strategies include the correct and universal use of masks by both students and staff, practicing physical distance, which includes scenarios for 3 feet or 6 feet of physical distancing, ensuring that proper hand washing and respiratory etiquette is followed, ensuring that cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities remain a top priority, and utilizing contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine when there has been a reported case or a potential exposure. Again, because guidance is changing constantly, we will be sure to share the updates as they become available. Given the recent pandemic, schools have had to come up with innovative ways to serve meals to students and families. Because these ways deviate from typical food service, food safety has become increasingly important. Prior to the start of the school year, SFAs should work to identify the method of meal service that works best for their facilities. This includes identifying where and how meals will be served, as well as the method of claiming meals. Because meal service may change unexpectedly, in the event of a health emergency, a meal service plan should be flexible and easily adaptable. Additionally, meal service plans should be communicated with all members of the school food community, and we'll talk a little bit about the school food community a little later on. So as you work through the planning phase, there are several things that you will want to consider. We have recently received updated guidance from the CDC with regards to serving meals, and this guidance states that given the very low transmission from surfaces and shared objects, there is no need to limit food service approaches to single items or packaged meals. What that means is that schools are no longer needing to provide prepackaged meals, cutlery, or food items. I know that's been a very big practice in the previous school year. Again, recent guidance from the CDC meal service let us know that that is no longer needed because of the low risk of transmission. Reusable items may be used as long as they are either manually washed, rinsed, and sanitized in a 3-compartment sink, or they are cleaned and sanitized in a dishwasher. Individuals should wash their hands after removing their gloves or after directly handling used food service items. Schools may also allow food preparation booths, sampling of food or beverage self-service stations such as hot bars and salad bars that don't include whole product. In these scenarios, It is of the utmost importance to incorporate food safety guidance previously mentioned, including the proper wearing of face masks, physical distancing, proper hand washing, proper cleaning, and proper sanitizing. While students may bring lunch from home, schools are encouraged to keep each student's belongings separated and stored in individually labeled containers or cubbies. Communication with families about cleaning items that are brought from home is also recommended. Lastly, schools must ensure adherence to students' 504 plans if applicable, and anaphylaxis action plans include ensuring that students are not exposed to foods which they may be allergic. Whether meals are served in classrooms, the cafeteria, or outdoors, schools should work to ensure that specific protocols are in place to not only ensure food safety, but student safety. To the extent feasible, schools should allow students to eat lunch and breakfast in their classrooms rather than mixing in the cafeteria. Despite where meals are served, schools should ensure that they are following the physical distancing and hygiene guidance that was previously provided. Schools should work to reinforce frequent, proper hand washing strategies by both staff and students. This includes washing with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Hand sanitizer should be available if students are unable to wash their hands prior to meal service. Tables and chairs should be cleaned and sanitized before and after each meal. Additionally, schools should routinely clean and disinfect surfaces and objects that are frequently touched, such as kitchen countertops, cafeteria and service tables, door handles, carts, and trays. Now, I know I've said a lot, and that sounds like a lot of things you need to implement, but what we'd like to hear from you are what are some of the challenges that you've experienced in your school while serving meals? Feel free to drop some challenges that you've experienced in the chat. You'd be surprised to see how many of your peers may have had those same challenges. Okay, so while you continue to just drop your challenges in the chat, we will go ahead and move on. We'll be reviewing those, and just keep an eye on the chat and see what some of the other challenges that your peers have been experiencing. Okay, so while schools are working to ensure that all students can return to school safely, we know that there will be instances where students will have to continue to learn in a virtual environment. This will create the need for meal distribution to continue for families. Some things to consider when providing meals for families include, to the extent feasible, if schools are providing grab-and-go meals to families, schools should implement a plan for curbside pickup or contactless delivery service to minimize the contact with students and their families. Also, when providing meals to families, be sure to include instructions for storing and preparing meals as well as recommended portion sizes. Per food safety protocols, grab-and-go meals that are not shelf-stable must be placed in the refrigerator within 2 hours and stored for under 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, hot foods must be reheated to 165 degrees Fahrenheit before consumption. Additional reheating instructions can be found linked in the presentation here and can be shared with your families. Foods that are known as shelf-stable can be stored at room temperature for an extended period of time. These include items like cereal, raisins, applesauce, sun butter, crackers, granola, dried meats and fruits, and juice. Also, shelf-stable milk may be used as needed. Detailed information on shelf-stable foods, those that can be stored for a long period of time, can be found here in the presentation as well. Additionally, more information for crediting shelf-stable meat, poultry, and seafood products can be found in the link in this presentation as well. So just who is your school food community and how can they help you create a culture of food safety? Listed here by role, your school food community are the following people, and they can support a culture of food safety in the following ways. Food service staff should be thoroughly informed about food safety practices and procedures. Remember that they can actually earn professional standard credit hours for attending food safety trainings. School administration can support the food service staff and director by having an overall knowledge of the program and encouraging engagement by other staff. This includes principals, school leaders, and office managers. Teachers can model desired behaviors by incorporating food safety lessons during meal service. Nurses are critical in helping maintain student health records. They can track and update student allergy lists as needed. Parents can support by ensuring that sick students are kept home and by picking up students quickly if they become ill. Lastly, students can practice good hygiene procedures by washing their hands, using hand sanitizer properly, and covering their mouth or nose when they cough or sneeze. Now that we looked at recent guidance for providing meals, we must now bring our school food community into the fold. As the food service director, you will lead the charge in creating a culture of food safety for your organization. When creating communication regarding food safety, always make sure that it is specific to your organization and exists throughout your campuses. Take the necessary time to identify what people need to be made aware of the practices that exist as part of your school food safety plan and ensure that they are trained periodically. Once you've identified these people, share the expectation for implementing these practices. While it is you who are leading the charge, there is a shared responsibility for your school food community to do their part. Lastly, you can be prepared for unexpected food safety situations like a disaster or a USDA food recall by developing and training staff on recall procedures as well as maintaining updated contact information for key personnel. We'll also hear about communicating with your school community later on today from our guest presenter. So in conclusion, here are a few takeaways that can help us to ensure that our food service is safe. The first is that food safety is more important now more than ever as we return to in-person learning this year. Families are counting on us to continue ensuring a safe environment for their students. What may have worked in the past may need to be revisited to ensure a safe food environment. Be flexible in your approach, but be committed to your outcome. A culture of food safety is the responsibility of different members of the school food community. Don't go it alone. And lastly, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. What works for one organization or one school on one campus in your organization may not work for another. And while this presentation is designed to provide an overview of the measures to be taken to ensure a safe food environment, more information can be found in the most recent Aussie guidance, which is linked in the following slide. So as you continue to develop your plan, we have linked some resources that can prove helpful and provide insights to some best practices. So that being said, I know there's been a lot of activity in the chat. I am going to turn it to Alex to see if there were any questions that we had come through.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lizette. All right, so we did have one question. Is the distancing guidance still 3 feet masked and 6 feet unmasked? This makes eating tricky, especially because rooms aren't large enough, of course, except for the cafeteria. And I see Liz just popped on to answer this one.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you, Lizette. Great question. I imagine that many people are facing this. So thank you first for asking the question, because I think others may appreciate the answer as well. So I'm going to try to channel our health and safety colleagues here that we work with. And what I'm going to share with you is the most updated health and safety guidance from Aussie. And what it really stresses is using 5 mitigation strategies. So Nigel, could I ask you, if it's not too much trouble, to toggle back to the slide that shows our 5 key mitigation strategies, because these are really the recommendations to use.
Sure.
And I stress this because there's no one size fits all, as Lizette mentioned many times. There's no one size fits all. Every school building is different. Every size of campus is different, the students you're trying to feed. And so utilizing these 5 key mitigation strategies and customizing them to meet your need is probably what everyone is in the process of doing. one of the key mitigation strategies, as you see right there, is physical distancing. And so physical distancing, I'm going to read straight from the guidance here just for a minute, bear with me. One thing to note is that these physical distancing, these are recommendations. So there was a period of time, maybe a year ago or so ago, where these were requirements. These are recommendations. So the recommendations is to use all 5 key mitigation strategies, one of them being physical distancing. And the recommendations is 3 feet of physical distancing between students in elementary school while in classrooms, between students in classrooms in middle and high school. Sorry, I'm literally reading from the guidance here. And then the other recommendation is 6 feet of physical distancing for the following scenarios: between adults at all times, between students and adults at all times, in middle and high school, sorry, I'm going to skip to the next one. During activities when face masks cannot be worn, such as eating. So I think there's a couple others in here as well, but that's the key one everyone's looking for. So the recommendation is 6 feet while folks are eating. We know that that potentially is not possible for everyone. So layering the key mitigation strategies will be really important to do the very best you can for your school campus and those that you're feeding there. I hope that helped answer. Sorry if it was a little bit long and wordy. The link to the health and safety guidance was also the first one I just dropped in the 4 resources there. So if you want to look it up, what I just read off is on page 5 and 6.
Awesome, thanks, Liz. We had one other question. What's the shelf-stable food storage life? Someone couldn't click the link. That link is in our serving meals in schools guidance, but I just pulled it here and I'm just going to drop it right into the chat on shelf-stable foods.
And I'd also add, Alex, each food is going to have on it its expiration date. So while you do have the shelf-stable life guidance, you do want to pay attention to expiration dates on food.
All right, thanks, Lizette. All the questions that we have for now.
Awesome. And with that, I will now turn it over to Kimberly, who will discuss nutrition waivers and flexibility.
Thanks, Lizette. All right. So before we dive into meal waivers and flexibilities for this upcoming school year, I want to focus on the overall flexibility to operate the Seamless Summer Program, or SSO, for the 2021-22 school year. While there are a number of ways to increase access to meals in the coming school year, utilizing the SSO option to provide breakfast and lunch free of charge to students is the greatest way to increase access. A third meal type, like snack, can still be served and claimed, but under the Nslp program. Traditionally, SSO is a subset of the Nslp program and is a way to serve meals on long school breaks or in case of emergencies. For the upcoming school year, all SFAs are encouraged to provide breakfast and lunch through SSO for the entire school year. There are so many benefits to operating SSO, and our written meal policy guidance details many of these, so I'll touch on a few here today. First, SSO allows meals to be provided to all students free of charge. Additionally, all meals will be reimbursed at the free rate for SFAs and not their identified free CEP percentage rate. It can't get much better than that. This means no charging students for meals, no collecting meal payments from families, and none of the administrative work that goes into any of these functions. And as for your Nslp SSO application, this means that all schools operating SSO are considered non-pricing. SFAs can always reference the Nslp SSO application training in Articulate online for specifics on these application documentation nuances. Now, if you've been part of the CEP, the community eligibility provision in the past, You may be wondering, well, I already am providing free meals free of charge to students, and I reduced my administrative burden. So what is the purpose of operating SSO? Well, for the upcoming school year, SSO meals will also be reimbursed at a higher rate. They'll be reimbursed at the summer food service program rate without completing a summer food service application in Orchard. So the purpose of this is to offset the cost associated with providing a safe meal service this school year. And lastly, all other flexibilities and waivers can be applied to SSO, not just the Nslp program. Now let's talk about the waivers available for the upcoming school year. These waivers are intended to promote operational flexibility, and once again, they can be provided to both Nslp and SSO. The first waiver we have is the non-congregate meals waiver, which means meals may be taken away from the school site and consumed elsewhere, allowing for physical distancing. This waiver specifically allows for meals to be served via a grab-and-go model, curbside pickup, mobile or bus routes. Additionally, multiple days worth of meals, bulk items, and home delivery are allowable. This is a new clarification since our last summer series at the beginning of July. And this new information will be included in our upcoming written meal policy guidance. As a reminder, when electing the non-congregate waiver, schools must offer the same meal type to every enrolled student, whether they are attending in-person or distance learning. The second waiver deals with mealtime flexibility. This allows SFAs to establish mealtimes and service links that best support access to nutritious meals while minimizing potential exposure to COVID-19. Meals may be served outside the required breakfast, lunch, snack, or even supper serving times. There's also a waiver allowing parents or guardians to pick up meals for their students this year again. Meals may be distributed to a parent or guardian to take home to their children without the children being present if certain processes are followed. In order to elect this waiver, SFAs must have a plan in place to ensure accurate accountability and verify that adults have eligible students or children. Include a process to ensure that meals are distributed only to parents or guardians of the eligible students and ensure duplicate meals are not distributed. When approved by a student, parent, or guardian, a proxy may pick up the school meals as well. SFA should have a plan in place to ensure proxies are approved by a student, parent, or guardian of the eligible student. These best practices for parent pickup of meals and snacks can be used in supporting the parent or guardian pickup process. This is linked in the speaker notes, but also at the end of the presentation as well. The next waiver deals with offer versus serve. Once again, the requirement for high school grades 9 through 12 to operate offer versus serve has been waived. Lastly, USDA has also renewed the flexibility for meal patterns. The meal pattern waiver this year is for the sodium 2 targets, vegetable subgroups, the requirement to serve a variety of milk, and the age group requirements. All other meal pattern requirements remain in effect this school year. When there are targeted and justified plans to support access to nutritious meals while minimizing potential exposure to COVID-19, Aussie may approve the request to waive the requirement that the meals meet the meal pattern requirements. The waiver request should specify each meal component and will be approved on a case-by-case basis. Meal pattern waivers may be approved for the duration of an SFA's education plan. SFAs should revise their meal pattern waiver if and when their education plans change. And as DC moves towards in-person instruction for students 5 days a week this year, Aussie anticipates the majority of students to be served meals while in person at school. While these waivers are available, SFAs should use them only for the duration and extent needed. For example, if students are in school all day, then all students wouldn't move towards the mealtime outside the required 10 to 2 hours for lunch, as this is not in the best interest of students, but SFA should consider the operational and health safety needs of the school staff and students. And as a reminder, the waiver request form is found in the library tab of Orchard and should be uploaded under the miscellaneous slot in the documents tab for the SSO Nslp application. The waiver request form has different tabs for each waiver. The first tab is the instruction tab that walks you through how to complete the form. Each waiver then has its own tab. SFAs should fill out each tab for each waiver they are requesting. Additionally, information must be provided on how this flexibility will improve your services you're able to, will improve services you are able to provide to program participants. Please make sure to provide a detailed explanation as this information will be collected by USDA. And if requesting a meal pattern waiver, the request must be targeted and justified and will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Therefore, please ensure to provide sufficient information. And since we just touched on the sodium meal pattern waiver, there's another sodium requirement I want to flag for everyone. It's the sodium levels contract modification template. As a reminder and for clarification, one is a waiver and the other one is a contract modification to bring your contract into compliance with the latest USDA sodium requirements. The sodium meal pattern waiver does not take place of the sodium contract modification. SFAs renewing with food service management companies or vendors must modify their contract to meet updated sodium level requirements. This contract change is not automatically given to SFAs or food service companies and vendors. SFAs may use the sodium levels contract modification template to do so. Aussie will continue to clarify the requirement with vendors and at the upcoming vendor training next week. And while a contract modification may not be required for self-prep SFAs, Aussie encourages all self-prep SFAs to revisit their menus and make any necessary adjustments, which may include product changes to meet any updated sodium level requirements. SFAs can upload the sodium level contract modification template under the food service contract modification slot in the Nslp SSO application. And we know that we provided a lot of information today, but we don't intend for you to memorize it all and have the resources for you to refer to when needed. So as mentioned before, attendees today will have access to the recording and slides from the presentation, and you can always refer back to the notes and the links in the slides. And at this time, I'd like to create a space for the attendees today to share how you're thinking about creating a healthy school community in relation to the available waivers and flexibilities for the upcoming school year. So we don't have multiple attendees trying to speak at once. Please raise your hand or use the raise your hand function in the icon bar and we'll unmute you. Additionally, attendees can feel free to share how you're going to create a healthy school community in the chat function too. All right, so I do see that Cheryl from Paul Public Charter School has mentioned that for the upcoming school year, they're going to do in-person meals, delivery meals, and Nslp to support their athletics and after-school programs, and they're going to utilize most of the waivers, so that's great. And Heather from Creative Minds has added, they plan on providing home delivery service again weekly to students with the medical exemption waivers. Does anyone else have anything to add? All right. So thank you again for sharing about how you're going to create a healthy school community. And Alex, do we have any pressing questions on this section about waivers and flexibilities?
Yeah, we got a couple of questions, so I'm just going to ask two of them really quickly, and then we'll save the rest of them for the end. So the first one that we got that I saw a lot of comments on is, should we apply for some or all of the waivers in case a student needs to quarantine? Is it better to be safe and complete the waivers? So yes, you can certainly complete the waivers with your plan in case a student needs to quarantine. And so feel free to fill out the waiver and say in the description and your justification that we would utilize this waiver if a student needs to quarantine, or if you're only going to do home delivery if a student needs to quarantine, you can say that in the justification. That way when you submit the waiver, it's already approved, and then you have your plan ready to go should you need to use it. And then the next one I'm going to ask right now is SSO open to all DC youth 18 and under, or only to LEA enrolled students? So that depends on what kind of site you choose to operate this year. If you are running SSO as an open site or open restricted, then it's open to youth 18 and under. But if you choose to operate SSO as a closed site, then it would just be open to the enrolled students. And then the next one I'm going to ask right now is,
if we have 1 or 2 students that will be staying virtual due to medical exemption, will we need to apply for these waivers? Yes, if you have someone, so I think the example here was providing grab-and-go meals to these students. So yes, you'll want to apply for those waivers. And when you fill out the waiver request form, you can say it's going to ask you for your reason and why do you need the waiver. And you can say providing meals to grab-and-go students that are virtually learning. Additionally, in the last session, we had some people ask, well, what if we don't have anyone that is learning virtually now, but we might have students that need to quarantine or need to stay home for a couple of days? Should we apply for the waivers anyways? And the answer there is yes. If you have a plan in place, if students need to quarantine, but you don't have anyone actually utilizing them now, we suggest applying for the waivers, uploading it in your application and getting approved. So that way, if you have to use it, you're already set and ready to go. And then the next question is complete the waivers in our application that is due this Friday. So yes, you want to fill out the waiver request form. And then one of the slides that Kimberly showed under the documents tab, there's a miscellaneous section, and that's where you're going to upload the waiver request form, and it will just be submitted and approved with your NSLP application. And then before we move on, I'm actually going to clarify something earlier, and I want to thank Martina, who's getting ready to speak, for flagging this for me. So the public health emergency in DC ended on 7/25. So that means all the licenses have to be current and not expired by 8/25. I've also heard that DC Health does not have any appointments until September, so there might be a little bit of period where your license isn't updated, but you have an appointment and you're waiting. When you fill out the NSLP SSO application, in the SSO portion, it does ask to submit your license. So for that, we are accepting, so if you've taken the training and you don't have your DC Health license yet, but you do have your certificate from the training, we'll accept that as the upload. So in the document section where it says DC Health card, just upload your training. Alternatively, if you have an appointment with DC Health, you can upload that email confirmation. We would accept that as well. So we know a lot of licenses are expired. Everyone's in a little bit of a bind. It's totally fine. In the application, just submit proof that you're working on getting it, and that will be sufficient for us.
Great. Thank you, Alex. And now I'm going to hand it over to Reggie Galloway from the Social Justice School, who's going to talk about how his SFA has been focusing on family engagement practices this year to build a healthy school environment at Social Justice. So now let's hear about the lessons learned from Reggie.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Reggie Galloway. I am the Director of Operations for the Social Justice School. We are very excited to be here. I bring greetings from our Executive Director, Myron Long, and let's hop in. All right, so I've never taught, but I know the teacher lingo. And I want to say, hopefully, at the end of this presentation, staff will be able to understand the connection between school meal compliance and family engagement, and begin to implement strategies to increase student participation and family engagement around school meals. So basically, by the end of this presentation, we want to make that connection between the school meal compliance and family engagement, and also give you a couple tools to get started to increase the student participation and family engagement around school meals. All right, a little bit about me before we really jump in. So I'm a DMV native from Silver Spring, Maryland, graduate of Kennedy High School and Montgomery County Public Schools. Anyone from MoCo? Any hands? All right, see a couple people. Springbrook, yes. All right. So prior to returning home to the DC area, I was a K-12 school administrator in Las Vegas, Nevada. And in Las Vegas, that was my first opportunity to be a food service director. And that's where I got really passionate about Blair, rival school. That's where I got really passionate about food meal service in schools. One fun fact about me, I'm a big DC sports fan, and my favorite team is the Washington Nationals. And one other fun fact about me, I've seen every James Bond movie, and I'm a big Marvel comic book nerd, so I've seen every MCU movie as well, and TV show. All right. Now, about SJS, just provide a little bit of context about our school. So we are a DC public charter middle school serving grades 5, 6, and 7 this year. Last year was our first school year, and that plays a little bit into our story, which we'll get into a little bit later. We are located in Northeast DC in walking distance of the Fort Taunton Metro Station. So if you get off of Fort Taunton, just come say hi. We're just literally a 5-minute walk away. We are an expeditionary learning school with a social justice makerspace. So we use DC as a backdrop to facilitate learning. We use the community as a backdrop for learning. And this upcoming school year, we're going to be serving approximately 120 scholar activists who are coming from all 8 wards in here in DC. We were very fortunate to have Kimberly as our program coordinator for last year. So her and I went back and forth this time last year and throughout the year on some of the things that made our meal service work here at SJS, particularly during a pandemic. Our first year, we made the conscious decision to have students who were EL, SPED, or really at risk, give them the opportunity to be in the building to learn. And we were doing that since the beginning of the school year in September. So as you can imagine, it's really important for us to create opportunities to have meal service both in school and to give parents the option to pick up meals throughout the school year. So with that said, last year, in terms of offer versus serve, we were served as a middle school. So all of our scholars received every component for all the meals. Now, getting to the waivers. These waivers are very important because they facilitated unique opportunities for our scholar activists and our families to receive food. So first, we did select the parent-guardian meal pickup waiver, and the way we implemented that was we enabled our parents and guardians to pick up all their meals on Mondays from 8 to 10, Monday mornings from 8 to 10, and they got all their meals for the week. So all their breakfast meals, all their lunch meals, and all their meals for the week. We also, for our kiddos in the building, we selected the non-congregate meals. So they were able to do grab and go breakfast. If you look at that picture right there, inside the building, we had the Justice for All posters and the meal posters there. We actually, myself, made it so when students arrived to the building, they're able to pick up the meal and let me know they wanted lunch. So we had breakfast in the classrooms, and given the unique circumstances around COVID, we distributed meals, lunch meals in the classroom, and they were also consumed in the classroom. All right, so for this, I like to make presentations interactive. So why does this matter? So question for you. As a school meal staff member, why do you think family engagement matters? And please just put in the chat and I'll read some of them out loud to the group. Why does family engagement matter in terms of school meals? All right, thank you. Creates buy-in for healthy practices. You need a beautiful program, but you need buy-in. Yes, buy-in, definitely. Can I get one more? Culturally relevant menus, beautiful. And family engagement creates a vibrant and supportive community, and our program cannot succeed without family input, buy-in, and support. Yes, love it. All right. So why does this matter, right? So a couple reasons. So first, we are a source of meals, breakfast and lunch 5 days a week for so many kiddos in our community. So that's so important. Secondly, we want to improve our dietary intake for our kiddos. Third, healthy meals and family engagement leads to positive impacts on health and obesity rates. Fourth, if we meet our children's nutritional needs, that will lead to better learning environments and student outcomes such as attendance, participation, and overall engagement. And then the fifth and sixth reasons I added on my own. So the fifth reason I would say is it's important for parents, guardians, and students to be aware of the free and reduced meal options, particularly with the flexibilities that we had through SSO this year. And also, we definitely want to learn and meet our students' unique dietary needs. Okay, so we're going to talk about three things that I think are very important in terms of sharing information with families and our requirements of the Nslp SSO program, and also that Aussie will hold us accountable to, but I believe are very important for family engagement. So the first one is the public notice. Second one is sharing our menus, how we do that. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about school wellness plans. All right, so public notice. So as you know, every year as we do the application, as we launch our programs or relaunch our programs, we have to let our community members and families and students know that we are participating in the Nslp, SSO, and the school breakfast program. So the purpose of public notice is just to let families know that our school or LEAs are participating in this awesome program. The requirement usually is to have the public notice on our website. My recommendation is to send out the public notice in the beginning of the year materials so that families are aware that their kiddos can have a free meal at school and plan accordingly. So I wanted to share a couple examples of the public notice from the SJS website. So on the left, you have like a general overview of how we do meals at SGS. And then on the right, there is the specific requirements that we need for the public notice, the Times New Roman font, the contact information for the point person for the meals at the school when meals are available. All right. So next topic is sharing menus. We have a little pop quiz here. So we're gonna get into it here. So the question is, sharing your menus in advance of the meal service is A, required under the Healthy Schools Act, B, gives parents and guardians time to plan, C, provides an avenue for parents and guardians to give feedback to the schools, or D, all of the above. So just take a second, type in the letter that you think corresponds to the correct answer. Seeing a lot of D's here. I'm seeing a lot of D's. Okay. And the answer is D, all of the above, right? So sharing menus, according to the Healthy Schools Act, we are required, all the schools participating in Nslp, SSO, or the school breakfast program are required to share the meals in advance of the meal service. This helps give families more flexibility to plan ahead of time if they want to pack their lunch, if they want to make sure that they get there early so the kid can enjoy the lunch or the meal or the breakfast, but get some time to plan ahead. And then also sharing the menu gives families the opportunity to give feedback. And one thing that's really cool is, this is one way that the symbiosis, family engagement, the relationships that we have with our kiddos, our parents and guardians, our families overall, can help us as school meal staff. So for example, if we receive the feedback that our kiddos want culturally diverse meals, or we see on the production sheet or an account sheet that one day when we're serving hot dogs that the kids aren't digging the hot dogs, they want more pizza, guess what? We can use that information, that data, to make those corrections on our ordering and really increase our meal participation, increase our consumption, and decrease our waste. So that's one way that sharing the menus can really be beneficial to how we execute and optimize the programs. All right, so the requirement for sharing the menus is just to post the menus ahead of time online, right? What I like to do is to make it like an ongoing process. So usually like a month ahead of time, your food meal provider will release the next month's menu. And as soon as I get that menu from the school meal provider, I will post that online on our website. 2 weeks ahead of time, I will send a printed copy home and all the necessary languages with our kiddos, so they can post it on the fridge and get ready for the next month's meals. 1 week ahead of time, I like to share out the upcoming week's menu in any like weekly newsletter or communication to families. Then finally, the week of, we know that a lot of our kiddos are visual learners. So I like to post our meals in the classroom for the week so they can plan, they can see, they can get excited about what we're going to serve in our school. And then here's just some examples, the hyperlinks that we use on the SJS website, and then also, example of the menus that we have. And, one thing I just want to point out is, you definitely want to use the menus that it's definitely great to customize the menus, but also if you have the menus from your vendor, They should have all the available options that you can choose from on their menu. So you can just put that in there and just relate to families the week of like what is actually going to be present in school. All right. So truth be told, this was a recent addition to our presentation. So we did a first draft, and I thought, one thing that I definitely want to talk about is accommodating meal changes. Like, how do we do that? Because for me, that was a little bit of a pain point last year, but definitely necessary. So just want to talk a little bit about this. There's a DC regulation, I'll read it. Well, actually, I'll just summarize it. So as school food authorities, under the Healthy Schools Act here in DC, we are required to do two things. The first thing is to make a reasonable effort to accommodate religious and non-medical dietary restrictions. Secondly, if a family or a student requests these changes, we shall not require a doctor's note to implement these changes. So in the chat, audience participation time again. What are some of the ways you think that parents and guardians can request a meal modification? Like, what are some of the ways, some of the avenues that parents and guardians can take to request a meal change? Enrollment app, I see the enrollment app. Enrollment forms, email. Written note, meal modification form, okay. Request through nurse, Google form. Stop by my office, I love that. Thank you, Heather. And Lola, I definitely agree. That's a very important point. Caregivers should not be afraid to ask for meal changes. We do it through enrollment, but also one-on-one conversations. That's awesome. So let's jump into this. All right, so the first way I have here is the enrollment or re-enrollment process. So I definitely love the fact that many of us use the enrollment or re-enrollment process to encourage families to notify the school of the child's needs around food and school meals. And a lot of things that we'll commonly see are, allergies, allergens, dietary needs, the need for plant-based food options, so vegan meals, and just other, things that it's good for us to know. So this is a copy of our New Scholar SJS enrollment form. And you see here we have a question around allergy and dietary restriction information. And we just ask our families, just list any allergies, list any dietary restrictions that your scholar has. And then for me, I'll put this in our student information system. We use PowerSchool, so we'll have a customized form for this. And we will, myself as our school food director, I will reach out to that family via email and just ask them, hey, I noticed that you're vegan, your child's a vegan or vegetarian. We have options. Would you like to explore those options for your kiddo in terms of breakfast and lunch? One cool thing that I'll say about the breakfast options, at least for the vendors that we use, is that a lot of the breakfast options are already vegan or vegetarian, depending on who your vendor is. And we do like cold lunch every day, so bagel, cereal, so it really works out well. We've got a question here from Marjorie. The question is, a doctor is not needed. Is that a requirement, or is that your school's policy? So I'll speak to the social justice school, and maybe if Kimberly or another Aussie team member could help me out with the HSA, that'd be awesome. So for social justice school, we want our kiddos to show up as themselves and fully and be known, loved, and heard, definitely heard. So we do not require a doctor's note.
Thanks, Reggie. And I can just speak to HSA. So it was on slide 47. I won't ask Nigel to navigate back to that one. But the HSA regulation is reasonably accommodate religious and non-medical dietary restrictions. A school food authority shall not require a student requesting a plant-based food option or other non-medical dietary accommodations to obtain a note from a doctor. And again, that reg HSA is on slide 47. Thanks.
All right. So, second way that we use at SJS to enable, empower our families and students to request meal changes is just, by family, email, phone or text or verbal communication. So what I love about our families at the Social Justice School is a lot of them will just hit us up on the phone, send a text message, hey, I'm coming to pick up our kiddo early, or hey, our kiddo broke our charger. I don't like those. Or hey, this is what we need, right? So our school families will notify the staff of a child's religious or non-medical dietary restrictions, what they need, and upon learning about these needs, our staff will either bring that to me or I'll get that directly and I'll make the modifications. All right, so making those modifications, right? So what I definitely recommend is that as soon as you get those requests from families, as soon as you get them, let your vendor know immediately. A lot of times with the ordering with the vendor that we use, if I find out something on a Wednesday, I won't be able to make the change for another week because of the way orders happened. But I'll email that our customer rep and our direct contact immediately to get them heads up, and sometimes they can make things happen sooner than later. So let them know immediately because they can make things happen sooner than later in some cases, or they can include another module, turn on like another module in your ordering system. And if necessary, definitely remind your vendor about the Healthy Schools Act and the addendum that we're held to, because sometimes the vendors just don't know about that requirement under the Healthy Schools Act. And then finally, once the meals are ordered and confirmed, always be sure to follow up with families and let them know. Always let them know, hey, Mrs. Howard, your child's meal is in. I'm really excited to serve it to them. And I'll let them know that they'll be getting this special meal. One other thing that I learned around this is sometimes this new meal won't necessarily show up on your production sheet, especially if your vendor is able to accommodate the request sooner than later. So one thing that you can do is like write in the facts on your production sheet, and then in the subsequent production sheet, the vendor should include those new meals. All right, finally, the wellness plan. So, wow, seems like a big gap there. So the wellness plan, so the purpose of the wellness plan, as we know, is to explain to the school community how our school or LEA incorporates general student wellness into the life of the school, the day-to-day life of school. And the requirement is to have the local wellness plan on the website. I believe that, we as, at least as a DC public charter school, we're required to have 2 parent representatives on our board. So that's a great way to get parents involved, but you only have 2, and depending on the size of your school, there are other ways that you want to get parents involved. And this is a great opportunity to get families involved and also get students involved who can serve on your wellness committee as well. So first thing that I recommend is to send out the wellness plan to parents and guardians at the beginning of the school year. Maybe have that in your handbook, or have it as like a separate document that you include, or send a link in the newsletter. Definitely provide a presentation on the wellness plan at the beginning of the year and during a family or school meeting. And then encourage and give families the opportunity to sit on the wellness committee or recommend changes to the plan. And I believe that there needs to be at least one meeting every year. I thought it was 3. We try to have 3 at SJS, but definitely get parents involved, get community members involved, partner organizations, and students too. It's a great leadership opportunity for students. And then this is just an example of our wellness plan from our website. All right. So what do we find at SJS? So as a result of these practices and strong communication with our families, we had the following outcomes. I'm very happy to say that we were able to offer meals to every scholar participating in remote learning. So last year we had 50 kiddos, and we were able to offer 35 of those 50 kiddos meals for the remote learning, so the families can pick them up. And that was a great flexibility to Waiver. Another thing is we were able to understand each of our scholars' unique dietary needs and adjust accordingly. And then finally, families understood or got a great sense of our evolving meal service and how to communicate their child's needs. So just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you to the Aussie team. The team has been awesome. They are always responsive, and I would encourage you to see the team as partners, as our partners in fighting food insecurity in the city. So I also like to offer myself as a resource. So here's my contact information and email address, and also check out our website. We hopefully are Aussie compliant. So if you ever need to see any examples there, we have a website right there.
Thanks, Reggie. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for those nice words. We paid Reggie to say that about us here at Aussie. All right, really quickly, I just wanted to go, I didn't see any more questions come into the chat, but if there are any more, Reggie can hop back on in the end. I did want to clarify one thing that I was saying earlier. I was just talking about HSA regulations for non-medical reasons. You don't need a doctor's note. Federally, if you're planning to serve a meal that goes outside of the meal pattern, so the meal typically would not be compliant, you do need a medical note in order to claim those meals. So I just wanted to differentiate the two things and make that clarity.
Thanks, Alex. So now I'm going to hand it off to Martina Fleming from Washington Latin Public Charter School. So she's going to talk about how her SFA is planning to operate for this upcoming school year.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm trying desperately to turn my camera on, but don't seem able to do that this morning. So I apologize for that. You may just have to go through the slides with me. So my name is Martina Fleming, as Kimberly said. Thank you for that. I am with Washington Latin Public Charter School. We are the Lions, Sumus Leones. So my presentation is about how the Lions eat lunch. Very quickly, to give you a little bit about who we are, Washington Latin serves 750 students, grades 5 through 12. We are, as per the mayor's orders, expecting to be fully open in person 5 days a week for students starting towards the end of August. Our first day is August 26th. I'm going to go through my slides here. I'm not big on reading slides word for word, so I'll sort of gloss them a little bit and give you a little additional information, and then I am happy to have you put questions in the chat and take them after. I will also put my email contact in the chat afterwards, and you all are welcome to call me after if you want me to go deeper on anything I'm talking about today. So very excited to be with you. First off, as Liz did earlier, I want to just reorient us quickly to the continuous education plan that I know we all had to fill out. The three main categories here, as Liz pointed out, I think safe reopening is part of what we all do, not necessarily related to lunch, but I think most of us have responsibilities for our building that dovetail with that. Student and staff well-being at the heart of what we do. And then accelerated learning, probably a little bit more on our academic side, but obviously food also important to that purpose. In addition to that, for our continuous education plan, we layered on some things that are important to us at Latin, specifically to Latin. We believe their community is deeply important. We are a very relational organization. That is really important to us. And we believe there is no such thing as community without food. We know that food brings people together, and we know it's important that people feel safe eating, but that there is also some element of community that goes to food. We're trying to take in some of the lessons and feedback from distance learning. And let me just say a quick side note about that. There are some things that are not specific to food service, so I'm going to step out of that for 1 second, that we had always meant to do, but never quite were able to make the change to, and we are using the pandemic as a way to think about that. So very dumb example, but we have a set of center stairs at the front of our building that probably 4 months after we moved in, we were like, God, we should have made one side up and one side down, and we didn't think to do that, and now we can't train kids away from that. We are using this as an opportunity. It is pandemic related for COVID spacing purposes, but it's a very handy way for us to do what we feel like we always should have done. So I encourage you to think about not just within food service, but within other operations in your building, stuff you wish you maybe had done for a while that you just couldn't quite train people out of once you didn't do it initially, that now, pandemic or not, you could fix before you bring them back into the building. So I just encourage you to think about that. So a few highlights from our safety plan, pretty much what everybody else was doing. Obviously, our established safety protocols, whatever we're doing for testing and vaccination, which could be a whole nother call. I'm happy to talk about that till the cows come home, but not here or now. So text me or email me if you want to chat about that. And then what happens when we have a positive case. The key thing I want to mention on this slide is that in every conversation I have had with anybody, anytime, I have described this as a dynamic situation. Nobody knows better than the people on this call right now how much things have changed, how much you have prepared a plan only to have it be invalidated at the 11th hour by a fundamentally different set of rules that now you have to prepare a whole different plan to manage. I don't fault anyone for that. Nobody's been through this before. We're all learning as we go. I think my colleagues at DC Health and Nslp and Aussie and PCSB and all of those places are doing the best they can. They are responding just like we are to things beyond their control. Having said that, it's important that whatever policies and protocols you put out to your families and your faculty, you let them know that it could change. Things can change and we'll have to adapt. There's really no other way to talk about that. So one of our basic ingoing protocols was that we would do things as much as possible in a way that was recognizable from the before times, right? So we serve grades 5 through 8. That means we have 2 full grades of students, our incoming 5th and our incoming 6th graders, who have never seen us do in-person school before. But that also means we have 6 other grades of students, a solid 80% of our population, who know how we did things before and who will remember some of that. And it was our strong belief that re-entry will be easier if we can keep some things familiar to people. Certain protocols, certain practices, where possible, should look as much the same as they can in order to make it easier for everybody upon re-entry. So some things that we have been doing all along, we have staggered lunch periods. So our 5th and 6th graders eat together, our 7th and 8th graders eat together, and our upper school all eats at the same time, although not in the same place. In our middle school, we are fortunate that we have a large cafeteria with a floor-to-ceiling air wall, something that you can roll across to truly divide the space into 2 rooms. Now, my understanding of the rules is that that's not necessary, and rolling dividers that do not go floor-to-ceiling are acceptable as a way to divide up a space, but we happen to be fortunate that we have the other. So we have always had one grade on one side and the other grade on the other side, 5th grade in the front, 6th grade in the back, 7th grade in the front, 8th grade in the back. And because we are defining cohorts for Aussie and Nslp purposes as full grades, if we put the whole 5th grade in the front and the whole 6th grade in the back, we are keeping the cohorts consistent based on the way we're defining cohorts. Now, 5th and 6th grade are kind of a special situation here because those students will not be fully vaccinated when they come to school. It's mathematically impossible at this point. But for the other grades, so I'm going to set 5, 6 aside for a minute. If we have the 7th grade in the front and the 8th grade in the back, we have kept our cohort consistency, our cohort integrity. And at that point, it makes it a little bit easier, a little bit less worrisome for us to have them spaced apart as much as possible for sure. But if it is not exactly 6 feet, we are feeling like that will be still within a safety margin. We are going to have students coming to get lunch from the kitchen. So those who are taking school lunch will come into the kitchen. They will come separated out, so they'll be staggered in their spacing. We will wipe down after every group of students comes through. So we will try to maintain as much of that protection as we possibly can, but we are going to allow them to come and get food from the kitchen. It was just logistically too complicated for us to be taking food all around the building, especially if we didn't have an elevator, which we do, but goodness, that sounds challenging. And then ongoing mitigation strategies that we have had in place starting in Q4 of last year when we started having people on campus, hand sanitizer, hand washing, table wiping, all of these things that you all are already doing. And then obviously some enhanced protocols in the kitchen itself for cleaning up for our food handlers. So then we have some other ideas that will be new and that we are considering. I will say right now that we don't know exactly which of these we're going to pursue, so don't quote me on this. We think that this might be something we're looking at, but the decisions are yet to be made. So one possibility in terms of spacing better is to split grades between the classrooms and our multipurpose room. And what I mean by that is that you would have some students eating in the classrooms while some are in the cafeteria, either alternating by advisories. So that's our word for homeroom. So we have 5 advisories in 5th grade, maybe 3 of them eat in the cafeteria on Monday and 2 of them eat in their classrooms on Tuesday, and then we switch. Or we take half the students from each advisory. So imagine that you've got your kids set up in their classrooms and you've got your chairs, and this chair is 1 and this chair is 2 and this chair is 1 and this chair is 2, all right next to each other. All the 1s go into the cafeteria on Monday and the 2s stay in the classroom, and then the next day they switch. We had also thought about doing that with recess, half the students out at recess while the other half are having lunch, and then flipping that. That's also a possibility that's under consideration, although there's staffing and monitoring implications that get a little more cumbersome there. For our 5th and 6th graders specifically, because we know they will be unvaccinated, we have made the investment in those 3-sided cardboard dividers. And I'm sorry, my camera's not working, or you would see me doing a kind of voguing thing right now. But those 3-sided dividers where there's a clear panel at the front and the 2 sides, and they sit up on the table, they're cardboard, they're very flexible, very lightweight, easy for students to use. And we think we will probably make use of those for our 5th and 6th graders, whether they are in the classroom or in the cafeteria. We're looking at different options for upper schools. Some of these might apply in 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th as well. Again, lots of conversation going on right now. So dining Alfresco. We are fortunate that we have some outdoor space. I have just invested in 3 additional picnic tables to go outdoors. Grades 9 through 12 will all be one cohort, so they will all be eating at the same time. But for as long as the weather permits, I think we are possibly going to let our juniors and seniors be outdoors and then put our 9th and 10th graders on opposite sides of the multipurpose room. So 9th in the front, 10th in the back, with that air wall, that floor to ceiling divider closed off. I think we may also have the opportunity for our upper schoolers to roam a little more than they had. So maybe the seniors get to kind of free range around the building, either into clubs or into classrooms with teachers. Obviously, they would need to be supervised. They couldn't be just any old where, but maybe we would have a few designated spaces where seniors could go for lunch, juniors could go outside, 9th and 10th in the multi-purpose rooms, something like that. So I'm sorry that it's not quite specifically settled just yet, but you get the general idea. There is going to be a call, as I understand it, on the 3rd of August regarding outdoor dining opportunities for schools. So that's worth putting on your calendar if this is something that is interesting to you. And then a kind of separate conversation, but I know that some of you had driven by our property and seen our rather enormous tents that we had on the field during Q4. So I wanted to say a few words about that and just, again, reiterate the opportunity for people to call me if you want to know about tents. I will say that we have taken those tents down. So they were, for us, only something we were using in Q4. They were always only intended to be in use for Q4. And psychologically, they were in part a way to get people comfortable being back on campus and being back in the building, because even those students who were having classes in those tents did come into the building to use the restroom, did come into the building to get their lunch. Some of our 8th and 9th graders had their classes indoors. So we were really just trying to get people used to the idea of being back here, as well as, of course, providing the safety of outdoor classrooms at a time when people really needed that in order to feel comfortable. So very quickly, what we did for Q4, we invited grades 5 through 9 back for hybrid learning. We did not invite our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders back in full, although they were on campus for particular classes and particular opportunities, because there we still had to be mixing and transitioning, and that was still not permitted. The cohorts were still of limited size, so we really couldn't figure out a good way to do that. But our 5th through 9th graders mostly could stay in cohort. So everybody takes 5th grade English, 5th grade math, 5th grade geography. It's not the same as 10th, 11th, 12th, where one person is taking chemistry and another one's taking biology and another one's taking French and another one's taking Spanish. You all know this conversation. Grades 5, 6, and 7, mostly in our outdoor tents. They stayed in those tents, so we set up 2 large tent structures which covered 14 classrooms each, 12 students and a teacher in each classroom. We used furniture from inside the building, so we were pretty careful with making sure what furniture we had outdoors, what furniture we kept indoors, that we kept an indoor option for every class, because we did have a couple of days where they just could not be outside, including one where there were winds of 30 miles an hour. The tents were whipping around, let alone the students, so they had to be indoors. And they mostly stayed outside in their outdoor classrooms with teachers rotating to them, except for science class and theater class, which were in designated areas. So there the students moved from their tent classroom to their designated space. They came inside to get lunch, but they ate outdoors, even if it was raining a little bit. We did have that one day where everybody had to be inside, and we staggered our lunch periods on that day. So that is a very quick run at how we're thinking about doing lunch moving forward and what we did with outdoor space and how we used outdoor space for this purpose. Again, we are not continuing. Those tents have come down. We are telling families that starting in the fall, it is 5 days a week indoors inside our building. So we will try to use our outdoor space a little more than we have. I think that's one of the nice things about this pandemic. The teachers are now comfortable going outside with their kids if they want to and using our field or using our courtyard. That's great, and we encourage that. But they're not going to be permanent outdoor classrooms. The baseline assumption is you're inside the building. I'm happy to take any questions or hear anything different, and I'm going to put my email contact in the chat. And again, I'm so sorry about my camera.
Thank you so much, Martina. So I don't actually see any questions now, but if you guys have any questions for Martina, she said she's going to drop her email, but of course you can put it in the chat. At the very end, we will do another larger Q&A. So if I see any questions come in for Martina, I will ask it at the end. Thanks again.
All right, so we have come time for break.
So our stretch break has concluded. So I'm going to move forward with the training and start on the next section, which is the Healthy Schools Act. So I want to take a step back and remember the intent of the DC Healthy Schools Act. The Healthy Schools Act was developed to help schools, students, families eat, stay healthy, learn healthy habits, and care for the environment and create healthy school communities. I'm going to repeat that last part. Create healthy school communities. Right now, after almost a year and a half of being at home, folks are craving community. I know the majority of the information we've presented today focuses on regulations, requirements, and what everyone has to do. But I also want to elevate the opportunity we have as school nutrition professionals to create healthy school communities for our students and families. Thanks again to Reggie for presenting on their healthy school community and to others who shared their stories as well. And now we wouldn't be Aussie if we didn't review a few requirements. For a comprehensive review of what is included and required by the DC Healthy Schools Act, you can reference the Healthy Schools Act guide, a 2-page overview or webinar. Today, I'll highlight just a few things as we review them. Please keep in mind the intent of the Healthy Schools Act and why these requirements are in place. We realize there are challenges in meeting these requirements this year, and implementing them may look different than before. But as you plan, please keep in mind the intent of the Healthy Schools Act and why these requirements are in place. As always, you can always reach out to your program specialist for additional support. Per the most recent amendment to the Healthy Schools Act, schools shall provide daily vegetarian options for breakfast and lunch and are encouraged to provide plant-based food options as the main course for breakfast and lunch. Schools shall provide reasonable accommodations for religious and non-medical dietary restrictions and may not require a student to obtain a note from the doctor in order to receive a plant-based or non-medical dietary accommodation. So this is the regulation that Reggie had highlighted and spoke about during his presentation. And then the Healthy Schools Act also requires that all milk should be unflavored, all grain products shall be whole grain rich, and schools should procure food consistent with the Good Food Purchasing Program, or GFPP, 5 core values: local economies, environmental sustainability, valued workforce, animal welfare, and nutrition. And as a reminder, SFAs are reimbursed 5 cents per day when at least one component of a reimbursable breakfast or lunch meal, excluding milk, is comprised entirely of locally grown or unprocessed food. In order to receive this additional reimbursement, SFAs must provide Aussie with the name and address of the farms where the locally grown foods were grown via the quarterly locally grown food item tracking log. Another item I want to highlight is in regards to alternate breakfast serving models. We know many schools must offer breakfast via alternate serving models. Last year, almost all meals were served through alternate serving models at the start of the school year due to the pandemic. We anticipate alternate serving models to continue this school year with medical exemption waivers in place for distance learning students and for in-person students present in the school building, as we know the health and safety guidance strongly encourages and recommends students eat in their classroom. For students receiving meals while they are distance learning, all meals would be received through alternate serving models. Additionally, Aussie anticipates awarding the $2 breakfast subsidy again this year. The Healthy Schools Act Amendment of 2018 supports the District of Columbia schools in increasing their breakfast participation by providing the annual $2 per student subsidy to support alternate breakfast serving models. We know that participation in school breakfast leads to increased dietary intake, reduced food insecurity, better test scores, improved student health, and fewer distractions in the classroom throughout the morning. So all schools are encouraged again to apply for the subsidy in their Nslp or SSO application. And now let's pause for a mini Q&A on this section that we just covered to answer any questions we have in the chat.
I don't see any questions at this time, but if you guys have any, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll circle back to them at the end.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to hand it over to the next presenter then.
Thanks, Kimberly. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alicia DiCamello Drummer, and I'm the Community Program Specialist on the School Programs team at Aussie. And I'm now going to walk us through the food support outside of the school meals program. In my main role at Aussie, I oversee the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is a federal nutrition program that provides food assistance to district residents all throughout the year across a network of over 70 meal sites. I appreciate the opportunity each year at this Nslp annual training to share my knowledge of the food supports outside of meal programs so that you have this information readily available to share with families or students who may ask you for assistance in finding additional food support throughout the year. So I'll start with a little bit of background on food assistance in general in our area. So there are a network of nonprofits across the district who provide food to individuals in need. These nonprofits obtain food by purchasing it from food retailers, through private and retail donations, and through a partnership with our local food bank, the Capital Area Food Bank, which you may be familiar with already. So the Capital Area Food Bank is the food bank for the District of Columbia. And what they do mainly is they operate a warehouse and procure and supply food to intermediaries like food pantries and soup kitchens who are providing food directly to individuals who need it. The food bank also operates some direct distribution programs, which you may have heard of, including mobile markets, family markets, which are located within schools in the district, and mobile distribution sites. The other two main sources of food through nonprofits across the district are food pantries, which are those individual organizations who are providing groceries to district residents, and soup kitchens who are providing prepared meals to district residents. So in the District of Columbia, there are many food resources that are available to anyone and that do not require any pre-certification to utilize. So again, these include visiting locations such as food pantries and soup kitchens, as well as mobile distribution sites. The soup kitchens provide, again, prepared meals, whereas food pantries are providing individuals with groceries. And some of you may be familiar with or have heard of the Weekend Bag Program, which is a program that provides bags of groceries to students, typically bi-weekly. And the goal of that program originally was to intend to bridge the gap between school meals on Friday and Monday. So providing food to students that they're able to easily use, prepare, and consume themselves at home without the help of family members. There are also a number of pandemic-specific district resources that have been developed over the past year, and the district has a great website that lists all of these, including eligibility, where to find them, and certification if necessary. So I encourage you to visit this link here to look at those pandemic-specific resources, and just to note, a lot of those continue to exist, and that website will be kept updated if anything changes. And then there are also two federal nutrition programs I want to highlight for you today as well. The first is the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is a federal nutrition program overseen by Aussie, and that is the program that I specialize in. So TFAP provides both groceries for home preparation and consumption, as well as prepared meals through a network of about 70 food pantries and soup kitchens across the city. The great thing about TFAP is that it can be accessed as often as needed through food pantries by district residents. There's no restriction on how often this can be accessed. There is an eligibility requirement for this program, and residents do have to certify to be able to receive the food. To be eligible, a household must have an income at or below 185% of the federal poverty line. And they also qualify automatically if they receive SNAP, TANF, or Medicaid. In the district, we all operate TFAP on a self-disclosure basis. So meaning for a family to qualify for TFAP, all they need to do is visit a food pantry that operates the program. And once a year, they complete what we call our self-disclosure form, where they provide their name, their address, the number of people that are in their household, and then they self-certify that they qualify for the program, either based on their income or program participation. So there's no pre-certification needed. A family can simply visit a food pantry when they need to obtain this food and certify on site. There's also no documentation of income or program participation required. So somebody cannot be asked to provide, for example, a pay stub or a SNAP card to prove that they participate in the program. It's all self-disclosed. The second program I wanted to highlight is the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which is overseen by the DC Department of Health. And CSFP provides a monthly box of food to individuals who are 60 and older in the district. And the eligibility for this program is a household income at or below 130% of the federal poverty line. With this program, you do have to pre-certify before you can visit a distribution site. And the way that residents pre-certify is by contacting a Capital Area Food Bank, which is who operates the certification portion of that program. So you would just direct families to contact the food bank directly, or give me a call or reach out to me if you have any further questions about how to pre-certify for the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. So there are a number of ways that you can easily find food resources in the district. The first is to use what the Capital Area Food Bank calls their Get Help page of their website, or by calling their Get Help phone number. They also have a map of food resources in the district that you can utilize. So with the Get Help search on their webpage, you enter your zip code and you'll be shown all of the food resources that are in your location by zip code. By utilizing the map of food resources in the district, it's actually kind of like a Google Maps would be, where you put your address in and then it actually zooms into your neighborhood, where you can on a map see dots with all of the food resources that are surrounding you. So this map would be great, especially if you're trying to find resources that are closest, let's say, to your school or within walking distance. And with both the Get Help search on the website and the map of food resources, you'll be able to find the site's name, address, typical hours of operation, and a phone number for how to reach them. If somebody doesn't have internet or you are looking for immediate food support and need help kind of in the moment, I suggest using the Capital Area Food Bank's Get Help phone number. And by using that, you're connected directly with somebody at their Hunger Lifeline. And what they'll do is ask your current location and find you a food distribution site that's open in that moment for you to go visit. So it just eliminates some of the work that you would otherwise have to do if you're searching yourself. And then something I always recommend doing if you're looking to make connections with local pantries or nonprofits who are operating these programs is to reach directly out to them with the phone number that you get by using the Get Help search or the map of the food resources in the district, and just ask them what additional programs are operating, what their hours of operations are, if they're able to partner with your school in any way. So that's a great way to find additional resources. So now you may be wondering what the best way is to communicate this information to students and families. And I have a few ideas myself based on my experience in the field, but would love for anybody who currently shares this information with students and families to drop in the chat how you're already doing so that we can all learn from each other. But I'll share a couple of ideas that I have with you today. So the first that I suggest is creating a brochure with all of the food resources closest to your school campus using the map of food resources in the district. So this can include food pantries and soup kitchens who are walking distance to the school and are open before and directly after school hours. If you'd like help developing this resource or finding those resources who are closest to you, please reach out to me and I'm happy to connect you with food pantries, create the brochure, give you a template, work with you to create a specific one for your school, and to support in any other way that I can. So just reach out to me if you have questions or want assistance with this. Another way that you can share this information is by using the Capillary Food Bank's Get Help cards. So they have index cards that provide their website and Get Help phone number. And what you could do is use these to either print them and post them in the school, pass them out in, I say, back to school packets. I don't know if those are still a thing, but you could distribute those directly. The food bank has offered to provide those to schools who are able to pick them up from their warehouse location, or I can provide you with electronic copies for you to print out yourself, or even to post on your website. And I believe that is it for me. So now I will hand it over to Alex, and I can answer any questions that have come through in the chat. And again, if you have any additional questions on this, need any additional support, please reach out to me at any time. I'm always here as a resource for this, and would love to work with anybody on this.
Thanks, Leisha. So we just had one question. Are these programs explained to parents in an orientation or only if a need is voiced or seen? There is a shame for some people, so I was wondering how you all navigate or offer that information.
Great question. So right now, Aussie has this information available on our website, and we've also partnered with some other district organizations and share this through what is called the Federal Nutrition Toolkit, which is something that Nigel will speak to in a little bit. But otherwise, right now, it's really up to schools to share this information the way that you feel that it best would best be communicated with your students and families. So that's why I said, again, I'm not sure if they're still a thing, but just like putting information, either a brochure or those Get Help phone numbers in the back to school packets where you're providing it to everybody, right? You're not just waiting for a student to ask you for help or a family to come to you. You're just outwardly providing that or posting it in your office. So yeah, we don't have a direct communication method to students and families except for this presentation today where I'm providing the information to you and hoping that you'll be able to share it. But I'm happy to work with you if you have a question or thoughts on how to best communicate this, like you say, so that it's being spread more widely, not just waiting until somebody comes to you with a need.
Thanks, Alicia. And then there was a suggestion in the chat to share all these resources and info with teachers and school leaders, so when they have convos with families, they can direct them accordingly. Okay, great. I see some other questions unrelated, so I'm just going to save those until the end.
All right. Well, thanks, Alicia and Alex. So before we end today, or as we are nearing the end of the training, I do want to take a couple of minutes to go over some helpful resources that are available to everyone who is participating in this training right now. These resources are broken down into two main categories. They are internal Aussie created resources and external resources. We're going to jump into the internal resources first, and then I'll let my colleague Ani Sweeney talk about the external resources. But however, any of the resources that you see today, please reach out to your program specialist or anyone on the school programs team if you have questions about the resources shared today, or if you need access to any of the resources that you see. We're always happy to help. In addition to sharing some of the more common resources that we're aware of, you all might utilize some resources that we don't necessarily touch on in the next few slides. So with that in mind, I'm going to engage us in another opportunity to engage in some virtual interactions and for an opportunity for you to help out your fellow school food authority by sharing some resources that you frequent. So just entered into the chat is a link to a Mentimeter board where you can share some of your favorite resources. You can click the link in the chat and that will magically transport you over to the Menti board. Once you're there, we ask that you share some additional resources that you think your peers on the call would find useful. So let's dive in. Again, I'm going to start with the internal Aussie resources that are available to all SFAs. They are also easy to access. These resources fall into three main buckets. The first one is Aussie tools stored on external platforms. The second is resources that can be found on the Aussie website. And then the third one are newsletters that we as a team release. So on your screen now is the NSLP Google Drive. This Google Drive is your first stop for all resources school meal programs. This is the largest and most comprehensive database of resources offered by the school programs team. If you have questions on any topics as it relates to operating any of your school meal programs, this should be your first stop. There are templates in this resource guide. There's guides, trainings that are available for just about any topic that you need for operating your programs. A little recommendation, if you have access to the NSLP Google Drive, or once you gain access to the Google Drive, we ask that you, or we recommend that you star the drive as a favorite folder. To do this, once in the drive, you'll right-click on NSLP resources, click on and select to add it to your starred folders. Once you do, you can always click on your starred folders and you'll be able to find the NSLP resources. Once in the NSLP Google Drive, you'll also see a full listing of folders sorted by topic area, like you see on your screen now. Let's move to the next resource. The next resource is the SFA Master Responsibilities Spreadsheet. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's a master list of everything that is due, compiled, and easy to read in one spreadsheet that is organized by annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily requirements. You should use this tool to ensure that you are meeting all deadlines and requirements of your nutrition programs. Each item links to additional information. And we know that not every SFA, we know that not everything on this master responsibility spreadsheet is a requirement for each SFA, so we recommend that you download and edit this spreadsheet for your own specific needs. Each item will also have additional links to find additional guidance, as you see in the highlighted green areas or circled green areas on your screen now. This spreadsheet is also found in the NSLP Google Drive, and the link to that has been dropped in the chat for you. Moving on. The next resource is the calendar of deliverables. This is also available, guess where, in the NSLP Google Drive. This calendar shows due dates for all of the NSLP and SSO claims for the entire school year. Also notice that the bottom half of the calendar of deliverables list all major due dates you should be aware of. For example, the first due date listed is July 30th, which is the due date for school meal applications. On that note, we hope that you are in the process of completing your application. If you're having trouble, please reach out to your program specialist immediately, as that due date is coming up very soon. Between this calendar of deliverables and the shared calendar, which we'll go over in just a second, you should be able to stay on track with all of your due dates. The next resource is Orchard. This is the system in which you utilize this is the system that you utilize to submit and modify your school meal program applications. Within Orchard is an extensive library of required documents needed for the NSLP application. If you navigate to the library, you'll click on the Downloads tab. And once you click on that Downloads tab, you will have access to the Documents and Templates tab. From here, you can scroll down to the NSLP documents. You can see a list of all downloadable documents available. These documents will be helpful to you as you complete your NSLP application. All right, the next resource, as I spoke about a little bit earlier, is the shared calendar. If you are looking to find out what events the school programs team has coming up, or when your next claim is due, you should check the shared calendar for that deadline, due date, or event. The NSLP Google Drive, like the NSLP Google Drive, once you have access to the shared calendar, it will be listed under Other Calendars. It's highly recommended that you click the checkbox next to the SMP Master Calendar to ensure the events, due dates, and deadlines also show up on your main calendar when you open it. As you can see on the calendar now, Growing Healthy Schools School Month is coming up. If I were to click on that green Growing Healthy Schools Month item there, you'll see another pop-out will show up. In that pop-out will be impertinent details about the specific event. From here, you can click on any hyperlinked items in the pop-out to be directed to an additional resource, registration page, template, or whatever is hyperlinked in this pop-out. All right. Next resource is going to be Articulate. So the school programs team has created several e-learning courses through the use of Articulate. Over the years, the team has and will continue to release these courses via email with links to each specific course. Currently, the team has crafted a self-guided school meal programs application training, which you heard Kimberly mention a little earlier today. In there, we also have an FFVP training, we have a procurement training, and a host of others. And that list is going to continue to grow as we continue to build out more e-learning courses for you all. Please contact your program specialist or myself for a comprehensive list of trainings available and links to access those trainings in Articulate. The next resource, internal resource, is going to be the Aussie website itself. The Aussie website houses many resources for operating your nutrition programs. Today, I'm going to highlight just a couple of the more common pages visited. First is the Aussie COVID-19 guidance documents page, where the most updated health and safety and meal policy guidance can be found. Next is the health and wellness training and resources page, which provides links to some of our more popular resources and webinars that the team has hosted, like our open calls, the Nslp 101, 102, and our most recent training, our most recent summer series trainings. This is also where you're going to find a recording of today's annual training. Finally, also on the resources and training page, you're going to find a link to the Aussie State Agency memos page. This is where you can find a comprehensive and chronological list of all waivers and guidance released by USDA and Aussie over the past 15 months. Finally, whoops, I clicked a little too fast for you all. Finally is the newsletters that our team produces and releases on a monthly basis. So those two newsletters are Beyond the Tray and Sprouted Out. Beyond the Tray provides the latest information on all things school meal programs. It'll keep you abreast of grants that are available and other funding opportunities that are available, alongside a host of other resources. And Sprouted Out is the newsletter. It's the go-to resource for all things school gardens programs. Links to subscribe to either of those newsletters will be dropped in the chat for you now. With that, I'm going to pass it over to my teammate, Ani, who is going to go over the external resources that are available to you all. Just as a reminder, please go into that Menti if you haven't had a chance to, into that Menti board and drop some additional resources that you all find useful. Ani, take it away.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Nigel. Okay, so now that we've discussed many of the Aussie developed tools and resources, we're going to share some of the great external resources that are available to you. The list we have here is not all-inclusive, as there are many other organizations and sites that can provide current and reliable information. In the coming slides, we will discuss the new Federal Nutrition Toolkit, the School Meal Programs Toolkit, the USDA website, which is the main source for our programs, the Institute of Child Nutrition, or ICN, which is a great site for program resources and professional development trainings, the Food Buying Guide, which is your best tool for menu planning, the School Nutrition Association, or SNA, which is known for providing program updates and training webinars, and lastly, the Food Resource and Action Center, or FRAC, which is a reliable resource for program-related policy and regulations to be digested and shared out. As we go through these resources, if you know of any other additional local resources, tools, or partners, please share them on the Menti board that Nigel shared out earlier. Okay, so our first resource, Aussie's partnered with DC Hunger Solutions recently to release the DC Federal Nutrition Programs Toolkit, which was designed to help community-based organizations, social service and healthcare providers, district agencies, and community members connect low-income households with federal nutrition programs. SFAs can use the new toolkit as a valuable resource to connect their families to several different programs such as WIC, SNAP, school meals programs, PEBT, and more. This is a way for DC residents to navigate all of these programs in one location. This was designed specifically to help DC community-based organizations, social service and healthcare providers, district agencies, and community members connect to low-income households with federal nutrition programs. This is going to be a great resource for you to share with your households. All right, next up, we have the School Meal Programs Toolkit. And this toolkit was created to raise awareness about the USDA Child Nutrition Waiver extensions, which offer free school meals to all children, regardless of household income. And this is going to be through June 2022. It's a resource for CDC Healthy School partners, as well as educational leaders and stakeholders. Please use this toolkit to inform parents that school meals are available for all children and to encourage their participation in school meal programs. This toolkit includes background information, sample social media posts, graphics, and newsletter text for you to use. Okay, one of the main places we would recommend for you is going directly to the source, and this is USDA. USDA's website is extremely extensive, and we could spend hours diving into the many pages it has to offer. Since we don't have that kind of time on our hands, I will highlight just a few. USDA's website will have fact sheets for all of the child nutrition programs, all memos released, and much, much more. First, I wanted to mention the Teen Nutrition page. Teen Nutrition is an initiative of the USDA Food and Nutrition Services. Their main goal is to support the federal child nutrition program to providing trainings and technical assistance to food service professionals, children, and their caregivers at schools, and through community programs to support lifelong healthy eating habits and increase physical activity. One main area of Teen Nutrition is their professional standards portfolio. Here you will find a template for tracking professional standard hours for yourself and for all other food service employees. USDA has just released this new handbook, which further breaks down the professional standards requirements and even has fun badges employees can earn to keep everyone on track and motivated. Aussie recommends you spend some time to delve deeper into what Teen Nutrition has to offer and see if the professional standards tools available will be helpful within your SFA. Next up is the Food Buying Guide. The Food Buying Guide is your best place for self-prep SFAs to meal plan by writing standardized recipes and verifying products and ingredients purchased to ensure that they will meet the meal pattern requirements. There's even a short cheat sheet guide for reviewing child nutrition or CN labels. This resource is also helpful for SFAs with vendors or food service management companies to double check to make sure that the meals provided meet the meal pattern requirements as well. As a friendly reminder, even if you have a vendor or food service management company, the SFA is ultimately responsible for all areas of the meal program. Once you enter the site, you can enter and create an account, or you can log on as a guest, which is what I do every time. This is an interactive site, will allow you to select any food item that you want to use in a recipe and determine what the component contribution will be. For example, if you purchase a certain case count of apples, this guide will inform you how much fruit the apple will contribute as based on the case count. Another example for grains. There's a grains chart which breaks down the grains into different categories. If you purchase a prepared muffin, it will tell you how many ounces of grain the muffin is equivalent to. A downloadable version of the Food Buying Guide is also available, so you can save it onto your desktop or you can print it out if you don't always have access to the internet. Next up is the Institute of Child Nutrition, or ICN, and this is your best place to check for resources so you don't have to recreate the wheel on topics that have already been thoroughly researched and designed to best provide the information to your school food professionals. First off, ICN offers free webinars and trainings. These trainings include handouts for employees, and all resources are translated into Spanish if needed. ICN also offers lots of food safety information. Their food safety library includes videos, printable posters, and standard operating procedures for every part of your food safety plan. One of the best things that ICN offers is their recipe box. Their recipe box is organized by the program you're operating, such as for schools or childcare centers, and each recipe has a colorful picture to show you what the final product could look at and is super helpful when looking for inspiration. Many of the recipes are already rated by our peers and will boast stars on the picture to encourage you to try it. Each recipe is standardized and includes a nutrition label at the end. The last thing I will say about ICN is that they have a free podcast called The Mix Up. So if you're looking to hear about what other food service professionals are up to around the nation, I highly suggest that you tune in. The School Nutrition Association. Their mission is to advance the quality of school meals through education and advocacy. This will be your main place to read the latest news on what's going on in the school food and nutrition world, as well as find current trainings to help round out your knowledge. SNA takes all of the latest regulations and updates, digests them, and summarizes them into easy to understand layman terms. Their content ranges from food safety to serving meals at the classroom, to school nutrition ethics, to food allergies, to procurement, and more. SNA is a member-based organization. However, the majority of their content is available online for free. SNA offers a monthly magazine and weekly newsletter, which is available on their website for free or can be emailed directly to you. I highly recommend that you check out SNA for school food program inspiration. The last organization I'm going to discuss is the Food Research and Action Center, or FRAC. FRAC is your best place to go find research on the extent of hunger and poverty and obesity among food insecure households. They have a deep understanding of federal policies and legislation that help reduce hunger, undernutrition, and obesity. If you're looking for specific policy news, visit their newsroom, which has a long list of varied topics to select from. FRAC offers a host of reports and downloadable guides for you to use. Okay, so we hope that you found some of these resources helpful, and then you will be able to incorporate them into your programs. Feel free to continue dropping some of your favorite tried and true local resources and partners into the Menti board, and feel free to drop any questions that you have into the chat. So I'm now going to turn it over to Alex for a mini Q&A for the internal and external resources.
Thank you, Ani. All right, the first question on here actually is going back to Nigel. So can those articulate courses be used to satisfy the annual hourly training requirements for food service staff? And if so, are they available in Spanish?
Great question. So we do not have the trainings available in Spanish as of now. And I do believe that they can be used for professional standards hours.
Thanks, Nigel. To follow up, the external resources that Ani went over, so ICN, for example, they do have resources and trainings available in Spanish. Okay, the next question is a three-part question, so I'm going to answer this in fragments. So the first one is there any flexibility for vendors currently dealing with staff employment limitations with regards to food requirements, trainings, and delivery windows? So food requirements, yes, there's flexibility. We have the waivers available this year. Of course, the waivers need to be targeted and justified. So if there's staffing issues, you'll definitely want to explain, like, why do you need a waiver for any of the food requirements, and then we'll take that on a case-by-case basis. Trainings this year and professional standards, there's no flexibility. You still have to hit the number of professional standards that are required for each role. And then lastly, delivery windows. That is something that is in your contract that you work out with your vendor. So whatever you agree upon, if you want to give them additional flexibility, that is just a contract requirement between you and your vendor. Okay, The next question is, what is the link for this? And do we have access to complete the waivers in the NSLP application? So I'm sure you guys have seen in the chat, Liz has been dropping in all of the links as Ani and Nigel have been talking. When we send out this presentation, all of the links for every slide are in the speaker notes. So if you guys want to access something, you can go to the speaker notes. And so example, the slide we're looking at now is the FRAC slide. In the speaker notes, you'll have the link to it and it will take you right to their website. And do we have access to complete the waivers in the NSLP application? So the waiver request form is in Orchard that Nigel showed us earlier. So you'll download the form, fill it out, and then you're going to upload it in your NSLP application. And so again, that's in the document section. Miscellaneous is where you're going to upload the waiver for this year. Okay, and then the last question that I'm seeing come in just now is we want to double down on Martina's question. It would be very helpful to have trainings in Spanish. We have several Spanish-speaking staff on our food service team this year. Okay, perfect. Thank you for bringing that up. Aussie doesn't have any now, but there are a ton of external resources. If you need help navigating, so say that you're looking for a food safety training or you want to look for a training in Spanish on production records and you're having trouble finding it, reach out to your program specialist. We're on these websites all the time. We can find a training in Spanish and send it over to you and your team. Okay, those are all the questions I'm seeing on specific to resources. There's some other questions that I'm going to circle back on after in the final Q&A. But before we get there, let's just do some quick announcements. Okay, so due July 30th, so that's in just a couple of days this Friday, we have the school meals application that we've talked about a couple times already today. So that is the SSO and the NSLP application. So the SSO application is located within the NSLP application in Orchard. So that's due to us on Friday. The waiver request form is uploaded within your NSLP application. So that's also due to us on Friday. And then if applicable, the CEP or Community Eligibility Provision elections are also due to us on Friday. So whether you're participating in SSO or NSLP, you still want to submit your CEP elections. Those elections will go to your program specialist, but then you need your election to fill out your SSO or NSLP application. So all of that is due on Friday. Then our upcoming trainings. So we have the NSLP annual training. So everyone's attended today. You'll get hours for that. So that's super awesome. We have our vendor training Thursday afternoon. An invite went out to all of the vendors. You can check in with your vendor, make sure they're attending. It's going to be a modified version of this training. They'll get all the information that you guys got that are applicable to vendors. And then this summer, we're also having our summer series. So we had a call in the very beginning of July, serving meals in the upcoming school year. So there's a recording of that on the Aussie website. We also had a call on Farm to School. So there's a recording on of that on the Aussie website. And then next Tuesday, it's Tuesday, August 3rd, oh, thank you, Nigel, for changing it. We had a typo on the last slide. I'm glad he's fixed that. It is models of meal service. So it will be about how to serve grab-and-go meals, meals in the classroom. And then we're also going to talk about serving meals outside. And we're going to have a speaker that has experience on serving meals outside join us for that call and talk about it a little bit more. And then we also have Aussie office hours. So this is something that we started this year. We're doing it every month. We skipped July since we have our annual trainings, but we'll pick back up next month. So you'll see an email come out from Nigel. You can sign up for 15 minutes, hop on the phone with me and your program specialist, and you can ask us any questions. So if you have a specific question, we can chat through it there. If you want to walk through a scenario and you're not quite sure what the best way to do it is, we can just sort through anything. And if we can't answer a question for whatever reason, we usually send them to USDA and try to get you guys a response. So if office hours are an interest of you, we'll pick those back up in August. All right, so we're also interested in gathering those that are currently self-prep or interested in transitioning to a self-prep meal service model to join us for 30 minutes following today's training. Our goal for this time is to assess interest in further conversations and to identify potential topics of interest for self-prep community of practice. So even if you're unable to join today's session, please let us know if you have an interest in joining other self-prep community of practice conversations by emailing Beth. So Beth can drop her contact info in the chat, or her email address in the chat here. Her contact info is also on the last slide of this training. So an invite, I believe, went out, and the invite says 12, but it looks like we're going to end this training a little bit early. So we're just going to do the self-prep community of practice when we wrap here. We'll give everyone about 5 minutes, and then we'll jump into that. And then we can drop the link to that meeting. I can actually just drop it in right now for everyone for the self-prep community of practice meeting. Oh, Liz got it. Thank you, Liz. Okay. So grants this year are TBD based on funding. So whenever we have more information about grants, we will send that out to you all. Aussie is also working on a pilot to order and store a small number of USDA foods on behalf of DC SFAs. So we recognize that limited storage capacity is a common barrier, keeping SFAs from bringing in more USDA foods. We hope that this pilot will help us assess the role increased storage opportunities would have on USDA foods usage. So more information is to come on that. And then you may be interested, you may remember that Aussie recently received a USDA Farm to School grant. One component of that grant will be the opportunity to receive technical assistance around locally grown and unprocessed food items. So be on the lookout for more information soon. And if you have any questions, that can be addressed to Beth Hannah. And then lastly, we're piloting a mentorship program this year where SFAs that have either been around for a while or just went through starting a new SFA can mentor some new SFAs that are coming on. So we have new SFAs starting this year. We'll have a couple new next year. So if you're interested in the mentorship program, you can reach out to Ani. All right, so that is it for announcements. So I'm going to pivot back to Q&A and answer Q&A questions that have come in today. But I'm actually going to kick it off with a question that came in last time that I think is important for everyone to hear. So Liz, I will kick this one to you. So it says, can an LEA serving SSO during holiday breaks or in the event of inclement weather where no school programming will take place? So sorry, can they serve meals during holiday breaks?
Thanks. Great question, Alex. And so I wish I had a very easy yes or no answer for you. It's a little bit more complex than that, so I'm going to break it up into parts. For folks that are operating the Seamless Summer Option, or SSO, weekend or holiday meals may not be provided on routine non-instructional days. So if a normal school week is Monday through Friday, meals can't be served and reimbursed for on Saturday and Sunday. That said, there are 2 ways to serve meals and be reimbursed for them on those non-instructional days. The first method involves the Seamless Summer Option as well. So SSO meals can be served during unanticipated school closures or for instructional breaks longer than 10 days. So in the instance of closures due to, let's say there's a snowstorm, or for those who maybe have winter breaks that are longer than 10 days, SSO meals may be served and may be reimbursed for. Alternatively, the second method to serve meals on those non-instructional days are that weekend or holiday meals may be provided through the Child and Adult Care Food Program at-risk program, so the CACFP program. Schools can serve meals and snacks in a structured and supervised environment with educational or enrichment activity. Those activities can be virtual in the coming school year, and we definitely encourage folks to consider participating in the CACFP at-risk program next year if that meets your needs.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, this one's another multi-part question, so I'm going to read it to you in pieces. So what are the key specific differences and benefits between SSO and NSLP?
Great question. So let's start with NSLP, which is the National School Lunch Program. Traditionally, the National School Lunch Program is what folks operate each year, and this requires a student to be deemed eligible to receive a free or reduced price meal. So it's either based on their income or their direct certification status, and they may be eligible and then receive that free meal free of charge to the student, and then you as the school food authority gets reimbursed at the free higher rate for that. Alternatively, if a student doesn't qualify for those free meals, they either pay for the meal and you get a small reimbursement, a paid reimbursement. So one of the big differences between NSLP and the seamless summer option is that we are charging in NSLP, students are charged for meals and there's differences in reimbursements. In the seamless summer option, all of that pricing and reimbursement is taken out of the equation. In seamless summer, all meals are served free to students, every single meal. Similarly, all meals are claimed at the free reimbursement rate, so you are getting the highest reimbursement rate. So we are increasing access to meals for students. We're removing that barrier of making anyone eligible or having to pay. The seamless summer option also reduces that administrative burden of having to figure out eligibility, having to process as many farm applications that relate to the school meal programs. Don't worry, we'll talk about farm applications in relation to PEBT in a minute, but farm applications are not needed to be processed to determine a student's eligibility for meals. And we're also, during SSO, reducing administrative burden in that when a student is served a meal and we're taking point of service, taking accountability, they don't have to be checked off by name as many do. It's just a tally sheet. You can just serve a meal to a student and count the meal. So those are some of the major differences. And if Alex or team wants to add any other, feel free to hop off mute, but those are definitely some of the major differences.
And then related to that, does CEP apply to both SSO and NSLP?
Yes and no. So great question. So what does apply, what portion of CEP that applies to both is that any SFA that would like to participate in CEP needs to elect CEP this coming year. So it doesn't matter if you're operating NSLP or SSO, please move forward and submit your CEP elections by the end of the week. That said, if you are operating SSO, there isn't really any implication there because you're already, as I just spoke about, offering free meals to students. There's not really a change there. But if folks are operating NSLP, which I think very few, if anyone, is this school year, CEP would be utilized to determine your free reimbursement claiming rate and your paid reimbursement claiming rate.
Thanks. And then you did touch on this, but just for more clarification, can you elaborate on the reimbursement for NSLP, SSO, and HSA?
Absolutely. So for those operating NSLP, which again might be very few and potentially could be no one this year, for those operating NSLP, you'd be reimbursed for meals at either a paid, reduced, or free rate, depending on student eligibility. Okay. Jumping over to SSO, folks are going to be reimbursed at a actually higher reimbursement rate. So that's something I actually missed in clarifying the difference between the two programs. For the coming school year, those who are operating SSO will be reimbursed at a higher per meal reimbursement rate. And I think hopefully Alex is going to be able to drop a chart showing the reimbursement rate. She just did in the chat. So you can see there's only one reimbursement rate for SSO. There's only the free reimbursement rate. There's no free, reduced, and paid. So what you see in the chart there will be the reimbursement rate for breakfast, lunch or supper, and snack. In addition to operating either NSLP or SSO, there is the DC Healthy Schools Act reimbursement rate. So that is a benefit of operating in the district, and there's local funds that support alternative breakfast serving models and serving breakfast free of charge in the district that also support serving local foods in the district. So there's an additional Healthy Schools Act reimbursement that gets reimbursed for breakfast, lunch, and local foods as well.
Thanks, Liz. So most people are using SSO instead of NSLP. We can no longer be SFSP, correct?
Correct. And that is in regards to the coming school year. If folks are operating SFSP right now, as of July, I think it's July 27th, that's perfectly fine. It is summer, it's summer programming. Once the school year starts, if your school year starts on August 30th, whatever your first day of school is, school food authorities can no longer operate SFSP. You must transition to most likely SSO or NSLP.
Thanks. And then another related to NSLP and SSO. I think you really sold us on SSO, but why would anyone apply for NSLP over SSO?
You know, that's a good question, Allison. I don't really know. I think there's, to be honest, I think there's so many benefits of running SSO this year. We are increasing access to meals for students. We are reducing administrative burden while we're actually serving the meals and on the back end so that we and you can focus more on enhancing the meal program or enhancing the school community environment this year. So I only see positives in operating SSO this year. There may be for some folks where SSO doesn't meet their school needs. And in those scenarios, we're happy to work with you to see if that's an option or see if NSLP is a better fit for you.
Can you just go back to what you said about tracking students by roster or tally sheets and just clarify what you mean, the difference between the two?
Absolutely. So what some folks may have been doing in the past for NSLP is by tracking meals by student name or ID number or barcode. So in traditional NSLP, if a school is not operating the community eligibility provision, they must track the meals served to students by name. Now, going into this school year, when folks are operating SSO, there's no need for that. So at Aussie, we have a template tally sheet you're more than welcome to use if it fits your needs. If it doesn't, you can use your own version. But all that's needed is serving a meal to a student, counting the meal. It doesn't require recording which student got a meal for operating SSO. It is just counting the meal.
Okay, and then going back to CEP and SSO, what is the purpose of completing the CEP workbook if they're operating SSO?
Great question. And the reason we're doing it is because USDA told us it's required, to be honest. They told us that it is required, that they anticipate putting out more CEP guidance in the future, but that for right now, we should elect CEP because there are no grace years allowable. So we are following instruction, assuming there's going to be more guidance forthcoming.
Thanks, Liz. I'm going to shift you just a little bit to farm applications and Title I funding related to SSO. So if electing SSO, Aussie won't have the data about how many people are free, reduced, and paid. Can our CEP rate provide that data so it won't affect Title I funding? Alternatively, we get that question about Title I funding if they're not CEP, so maybe you can speak to both scenarios.
Yes. So for those who operate CEP, yes, your CEP rate is utilized for that Title I funding, right? Because in essence, your CEP is used as your free and reduced rate. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part of that question, Alex?
Oh, so how can the CEP rate, the general question is like, how can schools assure Title I funding won't be affected based on whatever program they're running?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great question. And to be honest, that goes a little past the scope of my top of mind right here. So what I'll commit to is referencing back to USDA's material. USDA and US Department of Ed put out a worksheet on this, on how free and reduced rates and CEP was going to affect Title I funding. So there is a resource to tell us more about that. What I'll commit to is in the follow-up notes to this training, and when Nigel sends out kind of a follow-up notes and everything, we will include a link to that combined USDA, US Department of Ed combined resource on Title I funding.
Okay, great. Along the lines of farm applications, are farm applications required for SSO? And I'm really teeing you up for the next topic on PEBT.
I can tell. I like the train of questioning here. So schools operating SSO must have farm applications available for families if needed. Most likely, there is very little need for these farm applications, and there's no implication on a student's meal status. I'm going to pause there just because I can anticipate Alex's next question, and I'll elaborate further there.
So the next question is, what's the update on PEBT?
Okay. So after I'm done chatting, or if one of the team wants to, we'll drop a link to the PEBT website in the chat so everyone has the direct link to it. Students that were eligible for free meals in the 2021 school year up to June 24th, 2021 are eligible for summer 2021 PEBT, and there is no action needed at all. If a student was not eligible for PEBT in the 2021 school year and has had a change in circumstance, let's say there was a loss of employment, and they do not attend a CEP school, they can complete a farm application to determine eligibility for summer 2021 PEBT. And that is the reasoning why SSO schools must have farm applications available, right, for those PEBT implications. So summer EBT is underway right now, and hopefully that explains some eligibility for summer PEBT. The status of PEBT for the 21-22 school year is undetermined at this point, and when we have more information on that, we will surely share it. I will also drop in the chat the PEBT call center. There is now a consulting contract in place. So I know there was a call center last year that may have caused some frustrations and didn't provide as many answers as folks wanted. This new call center should be very well staffed, have a ton of information. And so we really encourage folks to utilize it to the best of their ability and direct families there as well.
Awesome. So let's say you do get some farm applications for PEBT purposes. Do you have to do verification on them this year, regardless of the number of farm applications you receive?
So the answer there is for folks who receive farm applications, first, before even answering that question, you do want to make sure to process those farm applications and update that in your student information system. And secondly, yes, you do have to conduct verification on those, any farm applications that are received before and up to October 1st. And that is for non-CEP schools.
Okay, so we have a clarification on PEBT, and I'm not sure if this is for summer or the school year, but what is the process for DC residents that attend Maryland schools?
That one I'm going to direct towards the PEBT call center, as that is definitely on a case-by-case basis and outside of the scope of my knowledge on the particular nuances here.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to switch gears off of this topic for a minute, and then I'll just do like another scan to see if any other questions have come in. So we've had some questions about the application. So where's the SSO application? So the SSO application is in Orchard. You're going to initiate an NSLP application. Once you do that, you'll be able to see a checkbox for whatever programs you're running. So NSLP, school breakfast program, HSA, and then there'll also be SSO. So when you click SSO, you'll get another drop down and you'll be able to fill in all of that SSO information. If you are running SSO, you're still going to have to fill out the general information and upload the documents that are required. So your basic business license, your vendor information, there's a whole slew of documents that are required. In Orchard, Nigel showed everybody the documents in Orchard. There's a required documents checklist. I always tell people print out that checklist and just check off as you get documents signed or upload them, and it's a really good way to track what's needed. It also explains what some of the documents are. And of course, if you need any other assistance, you can reach out to your program specialist. So what are next steps after you successfully submit the NSLP application? So once you submit the application, typically the program specialist is going to kick it back to you for anything that's missed or for another revision. Sometimes it can go back and forth a couple of times until it's officially approved. Once you are done with the NSLP application, I would suggest that everyone go look at the master responsibility spreadsheet. It's another sheet that Nigel showed us. It's located in the Google Drive, and it walks through everything that you need to do throughout the school year. So of course, serving meals most important, but you'll have claims that are due. If you did verification, you might have the FNS 742 due. Your financial documents will be due in December. So the master responsibility spreadsheet is really just a catch-all of everything that's due throughout the school year. If something has a specific due date, your program specialist will reach out to you and remind you, hey, this is coming up, upload it in Orchard. But I would recommend people to go to the master responsibility spreadsheet. And then we got a question on hourly training requirements for full-time and part-time food service staff and for managers. So on the master responsibility spreadsheet, there is professional standards training, and it links you to more documents. Also on the Google Drive is a folder on professional standards. So I pulled it up, and I can just drop the link here for everybody on the training requirements. So it's different. If you're the food service director, it's 12 hours, managers 10, I believe full-time staff is 8. But here's the professional standards flyer for everybody. Okay, I'm just doing a quick scan of the chat to see what other questions have come in.
And Alex, while you're doing that, I just wanted to flag that I dropped in the chat the portion of the application. So when you go to the application tab on your NSLP application, there's a section for program selection. As you mentioned, once you select the seamless summer option, that's what's going to generate all of the information that you need to fill in for SSO. So that just shows that it's part of the NSLP application for people to select.
Thanks, Lizette. And then we had another. Sorry, everyone, muted myself. So you can see where Lizette dropped in. The National School Lunch Program will be checked. You don't want to uncheck it. You'll just say that NSLP is inactive if you're not serving it. But since the SSO application is embedded within the NSLP application, you'll still need the NSLP application. And then another question that came in, does SSO include breakfast, lunch, and snacks? So in the Aussie meal service guidance, one of the links we dropped in, it was also sent out via email. It discusses what you can serve under SSO. So you can only serve 2 meals under SSO. So Aussie recommends serving breakfast and lunch under SSO since that's going to give you the highest reimbursement rates. And then if you want to serve snack, you'll serve snack under NSLP. So if you're serving breakfast, lunch, and snack, you're going to actually have NSLP and SSO both active in your NSLP SSO application. How many hours does this training provide us with? So you guys get 3 hours for today's training. We're getting a lot of questions on Maryland training hours and Maryland students. So I think it might be best for those if we just take those offline and follow up separately on Maryland, unless Liz, you want to weigh in.
No, I think that's the best course of action.
For training, it doesn't matter where you take the training. If you take a training in Maryland, it still counts as training. Okay. So I think we addressed all of the questions. Of course, if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to your program specialist or any other members of the Aussie team. All right, Nigel, let's move on to our final segment. All right, so you guys will remember that in the very beginning of this training, we dropped in a link to a Jamboard to share names, stories, and pictures of school food service heroes that have rocked their superpowers over the last year. So Nigel, let's just navigate over there and we can read out what we have. Awesome, thanks. Okay, so we have shout out to my food service manager who juggled various challenges in her own life during COVID to always show up for our students and their families in every possible way, including delivering meal boxes herself when families could not get here to pick up. I don't know what school that's from, but if you wrote that, we'd love to give your school a shout out, so feel free to drop it in the chat. And then the next one is Kelsey Weisgerber is a superhero for running the self-op program with integrity and strength. She has a passion for the children and pushed the program to provide the best for DCPS. And then we have two pictures here. Let's see if I can make them a little bit bigger for you guys. It looks like these are from DC Prep. And it looks like we have maybe some grab and go bags and then some kids in the kitchen. So thank you so much for sharing those as well. After this training, if you guys want to drop in any more pictures or any more shout outs, we'd love to see them. So feel free to do so.
And I didn't see anyone add to the Menti board, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe that means we did an excellent job of going over all of the available resources. No harm, no foul. I don't take it personally. It's okay.
And we really just want to thank you guys for everything that you did last year, everything you did last spring. I think I said in the last call, like hopefully the hardest is behind us, but then everyone told me not to jinx it. But I'm really confident that we're going to have a smooth year and really thank everyone for the hard work that you've done. On the next slide is all of our contact information. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to your program specialist, but you can reach out to anybody here. We know that guidance is always changing and there's questions that are coming up, or you might need to talk through a special scenario at your school. So you definitely don't have to wait for office hours to reach out. We're always here for you. And then Nigel has an evaluation. So before everyone hops off, please take the time to fill out the evaluation. We do look over them. We try to incorporate into next year's training. So any feedback you guys have is super helpful for us. So thanks again, everyone, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.